Bernie Sanders is pushing the point that even after the delegates are awarded in New Jersey and California, that Hillary Clinton will not have enough pledged normal delegates to reach her magic or the magic number. And he's right. Now, this next clip is basically going to be a discussion between Maria Kumar, Jonathan Gayhart, Michael Steele, and Joy Reid regarding Sanders' unwillingness to bow out of the campaign and the legitimacy of it.
End of the nominating process, no candidate will have enough pledged delegates to call the campaign a victory. They will be dependent upon super delegates. In other words, the Democratic National Convention will be a contested convention.
Wow, so Bernie Sanders does not sound like a candidate ready to step out of the race if he loses Tuesday's contest. California is the biggest prize that night, where Sanders is down 2 points to Hillary Clinton in the latest polls, but within the margin of error. So for more on this race in California, let's bring back Michael, Maria Teresa, Jonathan. So let's talk about, first of all, this question of a contested convention. Jonathan, I'll start with you. Because don't superdelegates always put it over the top? Like, it's not as if it would be new if it was the superdelegates who put the race over.
No, it would not. This would be nothing new, and this idea that initially the Sanders campaign or Bernie Sanders were saying the superdelegates were part of the rigged system. Now it's the superdelegates en masse are going to turn around and support him. And I just want to point out one particular thing. Superdelegates, by and large, are elected officials. These are Democrats of the Democratic Party. And one of the things that these elected officials have to do, they have to run for re-election. How do they run for re-election? They have to raise money. They need money and infrastructure, sometimes from the usually from the National Party to help them get elected. Bernie Sanders has not raised any money for the Democratic National Committee. So what makes him think that these what makes...
All right, let me stop that there. First of all, Jonathan is a huge Clinton supporter. All right, so, you know, and I obviously have a problem with that. You support who you support. But when he states that the Bernie Sanders basically shouldn't go after commitments from the superdelegates, that's bullshit. All right, you may not like the rules of the game, you may rail against the rules of the game, but at the end of the day, if you're going to be in the game, you're going to have to deal with the rules of the game. So he doesn't like superdelegates. There's a lot of people out there that don't like the superdelegates, and there's talk now of getting rid of the superdelegates. That being said, we're in the middle of the race, coming towards the tail end of the race. For him to ignore the superdelegates is basically just plain stupid. So yeah, he doesn't like the superdelegates, but that's the name of the game right now. He's got to play, so he's going to have to go after support from the superdelegates, even though he doesn't like the fact that there are superdelegates.
To think that these superdelegates are going to switch en masse to support him when he's done nothing to support them.
So that's Bernie's key argument. They're bought and paid for.
But you're not bought and paid for, though.
They're bought and paid for by the establishment. They paid their dues to this process. They're not rank and file Democrats. They're part of the intelligence. I'm just giving you his argument, and why his argument why his argument resonates with so many of his supporters and his voters. So when Bernie Sanders stands on that stage and goes, "This will be a contested convention," that's what he's talking about. He's going to contest over the process that gave Hillary 400.
And Michael Steele is absolutely correct. The superdelegates, elected officials that are depending on money from the Democratic National Committee in order to run for election, they're going to be quote unquote beholding in some cases to the DNC. Now, Bernie Sanders hasn't raised money specifically for the DNC, but he has raised money for individual Democratic candidates. Point in case, Tom Casanova out of Florida, and that's personal because Casanova's a Democrat and he's running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz for her seat. And now, aside though, yeah, I sent some money in for him because Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a piece of crap.
Gave Hillary 462 delegates before she even started running, and that's his argument.
Well, one, that's how the party, you're right, the party system, it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of folks watching this to see Bernie Sanders first attack the superdelegates for so long and saying, oh, but now I have a shot with them. And
it's not difficult for me because my understanding is those are the rules, and I got to play with the rules even though I don't like them.
it's that kind of hypocrisy, I think, that people are really saying, you know, you can't really have it both ways. Either you're against the superdelegate system or you're not, but you can't really actually expect.
No, that's bullshit. You can be against the superdelegate system, but understand that you got to play within the system and go forward. So what she's saying is not making a lot of sense.
Well, before we go back, we're going to go to some numbers because, I mean, the reality is for Sanders supporters, if the superdelegates were to all be beamed up to the Starship Enterprise and gone tomorrow, Hillary Clinton would still be ahead. Right. So what he's essentially saying is, well, yeah, then you go into the convention and overturn. Not really, because you.
No, it is a different race because of the reporting. She's constantly been reported with this giant count of delegates, and they always include the superdelegates. They would have been more even-handed if they had only reported the pledged delegates, because when they get to the convention, they can what can happen now is what happened in 2008, where Obama flipped a ton of the superdelegates.
But we didn't essentially overturn the results as they stand if the superdelegates were to vote for the person with less pledged delegates, which is what they'd have to do. All right, let's look at some polling. The LA Times poll, we polled as well, but the LA Times poll has 23% of Sanders supporters said they will not vote for Hillary Clinton in November. And among Sanders supporters in November, right, vote for Hillary Clinton, 65% not vote at all, 13% vote for Donald Trump, 10%. What do you think about that, Michael Steele?
Right, bro, we're going to need him.
Succinctly said, let's go to the number of registered voters. California is looking at a record registration. Democrats 43%, Republicans are 28%. This is a state that has not gone Republican for a very, very long time, right? So it is a Democratic playground. Is it a state, Maria Teresa, where Sanders could show something new, that he could show that he actually could have resonance among voters of color substantially?
Well, he is showing that he has resonance among folks of color, especially when you start looking on across generational lines.
Perfect. Yeah.
If you look at Latinos and young African Americans, he's speaking their language.
Yeah.
They actually feel that they are right now living in a political system that is rigged against them, but they're still living at home. They cannot actually achieve and access this American dream, and he's speaking to that. So I think that while he may have a tough time now because of the way the party rules are set up, I think that there is definitely a movement in California that you'll see future populists do quite well.
Yeah, and to that point, when you look into the internals in that poll number, Bernie Sanders with Latino voters under age 50, he's beating Hillary Clinton 58 to 31. Latino voters over 50, she's beating him 69% to 16%. And the other issue, Jonathan, is that you now have California as one of those majority non-white states. 39% of the electorate is Latino, another 11% is Asian American, another 6% African American. What does that mean for Hillary Clinton, the small African American piece?
That means that the African American population in California that's over 50, that drank the Kool-Aid, is not going to be able to push her into those ridiculously high numbers that she had down in the South. The African American population obviously is the not the first, not the second, but the third largest minority population in the state of California. The Hispanics are resonating to Bernie Sanders. The Asians seem to be resonating to Bernie Sanders. And the younger black voters seem to be resonating to Bernie Sanders. If Bernie had been able to do that job in the South, he wouldn't be in this position right now. But because the younger black voters did come out en masse in the southern states, where the older black voters who drank the Clinton Kool-Aid did come out and vote, that's how she drove those numbers up substantially. Now, Bernie didn't do as well with the Hispanic voters in the states of Florida and Texas, and I do not know why. In the state of Texas, the Hispanic voters are, for whatever reason, an anomaly, because for whatever reason, they consistently vote, for the most part, Republican, except in certain key areas like Dallas, Houston, and the Austin areas. So yeah, the effect of the lack of black voters in the state of California, and just so that you know, the black population is declining in the state of California for whatever reason. They're basically moving out of state, and I'm one of them. The effect of the black vote in California is steadily declining, and it looks like it's going to get nothing but worse. The Hispanic population, however, is growing by leaps and bounds. With Bernie being able to have inroads in the state of California with the Hispanic voters, that's what's really making this election close. Now, one final note as far as the black vote is concerned. Bernie Sanders, even though he knows that he has an issue with the black voters in California, still is making attempts to woo the black voters. He has made several campaign stops in places like Oakland, which has a larger black population than the average in the state. Cities like Compton, which has a huge black population in comparison percentage-wise to the other cities. So it's not that he's giving up on it. He's still trying to get it, but not in the same with the same energy that he's going into the Hispanic communities that are more readily acceptable to him.
Of that mix.
Well, I mean, it's significant because we have seen Hillary Clinton drive to huge majorities in southern states, primarily because African Americans came out in huge numbers to vote for her. This will be a test of Secretary Clinton's message and resonance with Latino voters. In California, in the primary and in the general election, if she cannot talk to and appeal to and get the votes of Latino voters, in addition to African American voters, she's in big trouble. But she's getting a huge assist from Donald Trump.
Yeah, and then really quickly, let's look at the young youth versus voters over 45. So voters under 45 are going for Bernie Sanders 66 to 30. Voters over 45 going for Hillary Clinton by about the same margin. It's basically flipped when you look at that demographic in terms of age. We don't have time to even talk about that. I guess they're good.
All right, but the voters under 50 that are going for Bernie Sanders, that it's a much larger block versus the voters that are over 50. And with the huge increase in the number of registrations this year in the state of California, Bernie has got a very strong shot at winning California. Again, it's going to depend on the turnout, but my feeling is that turnout is going to be huge given the number of new registrations.